Hey metalheads, fellow rock and rollers, good to see you again. Today I'm going to take you through a guitar setup, but specifically for the EVH Wolfgang special, because it has some issues that are a little different than other guitars. Pretty much the setup is the same, but I've done some mods to this guitar to make it super cool, a whole lot of fun to play, and it really wasn't a whole lot of fun to play right out of the box because, like any new guitar, it needs some work. Old guitars, and it's so frustrating, right? Because you buy a new nice guitar and then it fights you and it plays worse than your 12-year-old ESP that you got for 180 bucks at some dude's garage, which plays like butter. But you've also spent months, years tweaking on that guitar to make it play like that. So new guitars take time. So I've got some help here for the EVH special people, the Wolfgangers. Let's get started. I'm going to start down here at the nut first. I like to try and get my guitars down to where they are like a 0 fret guitar. You can use string gauges and whatnot, but I don't find string gauges valuable, as valuable as just feel. And right off the bat I knew this nut was way too high. If a good rule of thumb is to get half the thickness of the string between the string and the first fret. Now you can see this is really low. It's almost like a 0 fret guitar. I think, yeah, you can see that. And that's great. And it doesn't rattle it. It vibrates free and clear. But to get down to that, I had to take one of these little nut shims out of from under the nut. There's a couple of these under here, and everything from a factory is going to be high on both ends, because they want you to be able to play it out of the box without buzz, rattle, fret, stuff like that. So take one of these shims out. From there, super easy, there's 2 screws on the back, and then that will be down nice and low to the first fret. So a good rule of thumb is half the distance of this E string between the string and the fret, and you can follow that rule of thumb all the way down. And then, and for stringing these too, ball through the tuning pegs is the way to go. Put your ball through, put your string beads through on this end, bring them up to the bridge, cut them 1 inch past the locking block, or 1.5 inches, but at 1 inch past, right at the tuning pegs is great. Just cut them off there, stuff them in there, lock them, roll the tuners, and hit the fine pitch. It's good stuff. Saves a ton of time. Alright, so after the nut, we want to address the neck. This neck was really straight. Part of the reason I got this guitar was for the quarter sawn maple neck. It's going to be stable forever. And it was flat, but make sure you have a nice flat neck. A good rule of thumb is to press down the string at the first fret, press it here at the octave, and then see what kind of relief you have here. And I have, gosh, just about 1,000th, maybe even less, but there is a little bit of relief there, and you can hear it tap. So I've got a little bit of relief, which is good. It means I've got just a little bit of bend in the neck. So no truss rod adjustment necessary. Then take my fret leveling tool and start seeing if I can find frets that rock back and forth on the high spot. This is a really valuable tool. I love it. I don't use it for anything other than doing this on all my guitars. And once you get up to the closer frets, you turn it on edge, and you're looking for any place where you might have a rock between 3 frets, which would tell you that one of the frets is high. And if that's the case, then you mark that fret with dry erase pen right across the top. Not a thick, heavy mark, but just one little mark or a dash between the strings even. Any other frets that are high, mark with a nice dash or dots between the strings. And then you can take the strings off. You can lock this out in the down position so that they're loose. and put some towels under this side and this side, you can take the strings clear off. It's up to you. But then you can take a nice sharp flat file, steel flat file, and just nice and light rest it down on all the frets and go back and forth nice and easy. You could tape off your guitar if you're a little worried about scratching it. It's a good idea. But you just back and forth nice and light until the black marks are gone. And depending on the height of the fret, the offending fret, you may have to do it again. But usually the frets are pretty flat. In this case, I don't have any high frets. It's a nice guitar. They're really rolled off nicely on the edge of the neck, which was a nice treat. Anyway, I didn't have anything to deal with, but oftentimes down in here you'll get one or two that are high. And just real lightly with a nice sharp flat file, and then come back with emery cloth and your fingertip. Just take some patience, a little bit of work. Anyway, then you get your frets flat. So now we have straight neck, flat frets, and we can go to the bridge. And on this guitar I had some issues because of the locking tremolo. And when they had it locked out at the factory, it was hitting against the body. And I didn't like that because for my action, the way it's set up, this bridge is slightly lower on the high E side and higher over here. So when it was hitting the body, it was hitting here rather than square, and it was pulling the whole bridge kind of out of kilter, and I was having a hard time. I was having problems with the D-tuna because of that. It wasn't locking out uniformly or symmetrically. So I needed to lower the action. Well, I ground these, or I didn't grind them down, but I bottomed out to where I didn't have any adjustment left, for one. So I had to come back. So let's leave that alone and talk about this for a second. I had to I had to shim the neck, which you don't like to do, but sometimes you have to, and it's okay. I don't think it takes away from the sustain at all. And I used to use things like credit cards or strips of business card just right here at the front of the cavity, and decided that was kind of tacky. So these days I'm using strips of aluminum can. Turns out this stuff is 5/1000 thick. So every time you get a layer of it, you're looking at a 5/1000 increase in your height here, which results in quite a increase in the other end of the neck dropping low. A little bit of height increase here is quite a bit of the neck dropping low down there. Now, to make this real nice and solid and secure, you can use a Home Depot receipt or a Safeway receipt, something like this, to help you get this mock-up of what you're going to do to the aluminum can. This fills up my space, my cavity, neck cavity, real nice, with several folds of thickness. This is not to scale. I'm just using it as a demo for what you would do. But you utilize this receipt to come up with several folds that allow you an incremental increase in distance or shim height. And then you'll lay this in the cavity and you trim it to size and you mark it from the back. You can actually poke holes in it with a little hole punch. The aluminum's not that hard. You can use a paper hole punch and just punch your holes where you need them. It's very easy to score if you do this paint side down, and when you're looking for the holes and you run a little screwdriver or something sharp pointed up in there, you'll make the marks and then use a hole punch to punch the holes through. You end up with your shim. So it goes from 0, where the neck would connect to the wood of the body, 0, 1 thickness, 3 thickness, 5 thicknesses. It's a nice increasing plane of thickness. And you might ask, well, why don't we go 0 to 2 to 4 to 6? And the reason is you don't want to take any chance of something being high in the middle. We'd rather, if anything, have a slight low spot in the middle so that we have really good contact all the way around the cavity. So 0 to 1, 3 to 5, we'll make sure we never have a hump in the middle, because we don't want our neck to rock at all. We want solid contact all the way around. All right, so I had to shim the neck on this one, and that allowed me a little bit of extra bridge height, which was nice, because now I have things to play with. And I was able to get the action down low enough to where I like it. I wasn't even able to get the action low enough at first, but I got it down nice and low. So let's talk about the bridge now. I think that's my mother calling me to go out to lunch. I'm not sure. It's about that time of day. My mother's 84. She might need a ride up for a haircut. We'll see. All right, let's go back to this. Now, these fine tuners on this bridge.
Well, it's 10 minutes to 12, and I am home. And so give me a call when you're ready to go hair cutting, and I will be ready. Bye-bye.
You gotta love her, right? All right. Well, let's get back to this all right here. Okay, fine tuners on this bridge. You may have had problems with these jumping from in their adjustment, that you found that it would jump from undertuned to overtuned. And if you're frustrated with these, it's because there's a machining burr on the end of these adjustment screws. A little burr left over from machining, and until that wears off from use, you're going to see larger than you like jumps in tuning. It won't be smooth, incremental, and it won't stay. It'll move around, it'll jump tune, and when you try to adjust it, it may be not what you want. So what you do is you take a little thin strip of paper, sandpaper, some 200 grit, 400 grit, whatever you have, and you open up the space between this locking screw and the fine tuning post, and then you let the tension go back, and you just pull the strip out. And you do that about twice on each one. It takes the burr off, and you end up with fine tuners that work just like they're supposed to. Really nice adjustment, and they stay where you put them. Otherwise, you might have tuning instability issues. It's just a fault of the manufacturing. Then, also, we like to put a little bit of this lily white lubricant. Doesn't stain. It's nice. It doesn't collect dust. You may have to reapply it twice a year. It's a very nice light oil. And a drop on each of the screws. Run them all the way down, all the way out, all the way down, all the way up to have some lubrication in there. A drop on the detuner post so that it works nice and smooth without unnecessarily wearing a groove in the device. That's all well and good too. All right, so we've talked about frets, bridge, taking that nut down, turning this pickup from switching it from series for ripping hot leads to parallel, not splitting it, but to parallel using a push-pull volume knob. Really is nice. It makes this guitar totally usable and very friendly for clean and slightly driven tones, whereas this pickup stock for clean stuff I thought was really muddy and pretty much unusable in my opinion. Didn't like the tone of that at all. Alright, so we've talked about that and this little gizmo. Now, what's really exciting about this is the mod for locking tremolo where it locks out, or having it float, because having this lockup is nice when you want to use the detuner because it works real well, and with just a little bit of adjustment when I drop that out, I'm right back in tune. No problems. This works great. The system works great. I just have to tweak this knob just a hair whenever I pull out or put it back in. Not the case before, because this was hitting unequally. It was locking out on the body, and because you need this adjustment up and down this way, if it's not hitting exactly in the middle, it's going to be off kilter, and when you do this, it just doesn't work right. It's not a solid transition from regular tuning to drop D or drop whatever. So what I did was, and this is a super easy mod, anybody can do this, I used a medium styled paper locking clamp that you would see at anyone, any kind of Office Max or anywhere they have these little clips for locking together pieces of paper, folders, binders, whatever the case may be. And you keep these little handles with you, and anytime you want to go from locking to unlocking, or a completely cool floating system, you just put your handles back in and pull this guy out, and now you have a tremola. And then you back these two screws out about one turn, tune it back up, and you have now a tremola that is floating and goes both directions, which for sometimes I just really want that. I don't want it to be locked out. I don't think you can put a real nice vibrato on chords without being able to pull up slightly. Plus you can't cricket unless it's floating, which is sometimes fun. And I just wanted the option to be able to float. I want to pull up sometimes. That's what I want to do. A nice tremola, vibrato. Can't do that really without it being a floating type deal. But I also wanted to be able to lock that out so the detuna works, because when it's floating, the detune will not work. It requires too much retuning. So how did I, and this is set up just so it's flat, like you would normally think of setting up a bridge. It's flat here. It's not flat to the body because this is a curved top, but it's flat to the strings as they run parallel down the neck. So this is flat, same plane as the strings. And the gap that we have in here is perfect for this little guy with the addition of 2 rubber magnets. Everybody's got these on their fridge. This sort of stuff that has they don't work really well as refrigerator magnets. They're horrible as refrigerator magnets, but for what I'm using it for, they work great because they're magnetic. They stick to this steel clamp. This is stainless in here. Doesn't have enough carbon to hold a magnet of any kind. But for what I'm doing, it works great. So anytime I want to have it lock out, I put this clip in, just like that. Remove these side clips like that. Keep them. You don't want to lose them. And now I'm right back to something that's locked out tight, but it's not locking out on the body. It's locking out in a place that's always going to be symmetrical, have even forces on it, and it's going to keep that bridge stable. The detuner works great, and you're not hitting the top of your guitar, which is nice too. And it gives you an option to always go from floating or non-floating, which is cool. Don't you think? I think so. All right, so that's EVH Wolfgang stuff. Happy teching, wrench turning, working on your guitar, learning to work on your guitar and finding success in it is one of the most rewarding things as a musician I think you can find as a guitar player. Understanding how it works and then getting in to some of your gear and making it just the way you want it without any fear is a nice thing to be able to do. All right. So any questions about what I've done or other questions regarding setup, feel free to shoot them along. And I got to go take my mom to get her hair cut. So we'll see you next time. Old Guy Jamming, out.